And welcome. We have Katrina Hofstetter with Cornerstone Legal, our friend who we've had on for many, many times about estate planning. Thank you for coming again, Katrina,
Thank you.
and joining us. And then we also have Justine Bell with BeneGuides. She helps people find health insurance and two powerhouses of Greater Lansing. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And I know there's so much misinformation out there for families, especially moms. So we would love for you to kind of just guide us into those answers and help us with these problems that some people have. It's just so confusing, this topic. So if you could help us, that would be great.
Katrina, is it okay if I hit you with a quick question?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, one of the things that I feel like is misinformation is that you should, not should, but a lot of people wait until they're older to start thinking about wills and trusts. But I know for me, I have a lot going on. And so we have a child, we have a business. What triggers would you suggest in someone's life that would cause them to start thinking about a will and trust? Knowing that everyone should probably have one, but like what things can happen in life that you would suggest starting to have these conversations?
Yeah. I mean, I think you highlighted a couple of them right away, which is once you've got children, it's really important to have a plan in place. But I think the triggers are a little bit different for each person. So, you could have very little and still want to plan for it. You don't even have to have a house, but often I will have people come to me who they bought their first house. So now they want to make sure that they protect that investment. Maybe they just got married. And so now they want to protect each other. They want to provide for each other. Or they just had their first kid. So if you think about those major life events that happen, something big has been accomplished and now we really want to protect it because we worked really hard for it. And it doesn't have to be something that's worth millions of dollars, but it just depends on each individual person or family how they feel about protecting that thing that they've got now. So those kind of big life events are usually the triggers that I see.
I love that. And talk to me. So, in regards to like owning property and those sort of things, one of the things that I hear a lot about is wills and versus trusts and probate. And those are three words that I will say I'm happy that you handle for me and not that I have to handle. But
Sure.
can you talk a little bit about the benefit of having a trust over a will and how probate happens and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. I do want to start off by first just saying, and this confuses a lot of people when I sit down with them, but if you have a trust, you still have a will. And there's a couple of reasons for that. If you have minor children, the only place that you name a guardian for your minor children if you pass away is a will. So if you have minor children, the will is really important because it does that. But when you do trust planning and you add the will in, it's just a little backup because the only way that the trust planning works is if you put your assets in the trust. You can do that by ownership or beneficiary designation. But that crucial step is what keeps those assets out of probate. And that can often just go haywire in the future because when you sit down and do your plan, you're planning for what you have right now. Things change in the future. You get new assets or you start a business and you've got to add that new business in. So if you have a trust and then you forget to put new stuff in, you've re-exposed yourself to probate. And even though Michigan law has a backup plan, we don't always want to rely on that backup plan. And if an asset is going to go to probate, you just want to have a will. And when you do trust planning, you have something called a pour over will. And that just means if an asset goes to probate, it pours over to your trust. So I digress. When you have a trust, you also have a will for the backup planning and for the guardianship for minor children. But wills have to go through probate, whether it's for the guardianship side of it or the asset side of it. Generally, trusts are not going to go through probate unless you've got litigation issues. So the administration of your assets through a trust does not have to happen in probate. It does for a will.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And interestingly, in paperwork, I saw pour over will, and I feel like I understand that for the first time. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Same. Thank you.
Right. Um, So one of the things I think that is also that I hear a lot is people say things like, well, I just jot down that I want my kids to go to my parents, right? And one of the experiences that I want to speak to is sitting down with you for the first time and like thinking that I had it planned out and then having you hit me with questions that I hadn't even considered. So can you speak to the experience of that a little bit and just like when you're sitting down with parents with their regarding their kids and guardianship and like those scary decisions that we have to think about and make, like, would you have any advice, anything that people should particularly be thinking about or asking, that anything in that space?
Yeah, I think that, well, first, I see that a lot. People will say whether it's their guardians for their minor children or their entire estate, I hear comments like, well, I wrote down my wishes, or I told my kids what I wanted to have happen. And I cannot say strongly enough how much that's a bad idea. But it happens, and that's okay. There's always that backup plan. But when it comes to the guardianship side of it, I'm a mom myself. We've got 3 minor children, so I feel like I'm in the thick of it, and I see a lot of the issues that come up with this. One of the first things that I think is important is to understand how the guardianship side of things works. And it's probably not what people expect. So guardianship for minor children goes through probate. There has to be that kind of like that oversight. And so this process starts by someone stepping up. You're gone and your kids need a guardian. So someone steps up and they file a petition and say, I want to be guardian. And it maybe isn't the person that you've put in your will or in the little handwritten note, but somebody has to step up. And then, depending on a variety of circumstances and the judge's opinion, guardianship gets established. And some of those factors could be if your minor child is 14 or over in Michigan, they get a say in who their guardian is. And so there's some weight to that. The judge is going to ask that child where they want to go. And they actually have to sign off on some of the paperwork. Other factors might be, if there's conflicting people, if more than one person steps forward and says, I want to be named as guardian, then obviously if you have a will or if you wrote something down, that's going to have some weight. You can kind of speak from the grave a little bit. But ultimately, the judge is going to have some discretion to say, this is what's in the best interest of the child. This is where the child's going to go. But then that oversight continues until the child's an adult. So every year, the guardian has to file, right now, it's like a 3-page report, and they have to tell the court everything that's going on with your kid. Like, how are they doing socially, and how are they doing at school, and behavior, and, medically, all of that stuff. So that's important to understand that that's a pretty supervised process, and it does cost money. So I think that understanding what that looks like is important. And then the decision side of it's different for everyone. So hopefully my sister's not watching this video because I didn't name her as guardian of my children. She has 4 kids of her own. But some people turn to family. They've got siblings, or maybe mom and dad are young enough, so they're going to name their own parents. So grandma and grandpa are going to be guardians. We specifically chose some really close friends, and there's a lot that went into that decision. Yeah. But I think it's important to find someone, making that decision. You need to find someone or a couple that is willing and able to step in and raise your kids the way that you are raising them. So you don't want to have a lot of disruption there. We specifically chose people who they're our best friends. We go to church together. We know that they would raise our kids with those same values, and they would have just the upbringing that we are trying to do. But there's a lot more that can go into that. Could be geography. Are they going to have to move really far away?
Yep.
Do you have the money? Are you going to leave enough of an inheritance to support them so that you're not creating a financial drain on the other family? So there's a whole lot that goes into it. It's much more important than scrawling something on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's such a tricky topic because people don't like to talk about it, and you just don't want to have to think about it. So I appreciate you sharing that insight.
As
Definitely.
busy moms, what's the next thing on our to-do list? Like, if somebody is watching this, they don't have a trust right now. It sounds like what you're recommending is that they talk to somebody.
Yeah.
How reaching out to you, how does that work? If they aren't in our geographic area, or if you don't make sense for some reason, like where would they find somebody? Where do we go next?
Yeah. So having a consultation with someone who does estate planning is definitely important if you have minor children. And it goes well beyond just this guardianship discussion. There's a lot that goes into the inheritance side of things. So trusts are a great idea when you have minor children. But talking with someone who's a professional in that area is really important because you don't want to mess up something like that with handwritten documents, online templates. There's a lot of people that rely on those documents, but it is important to get that right. So definitely finding someone who does estate planning. Obviously that's something that we do here at Cornerstone Legal. And there are a lot of options as far as finding local attorneys. If you're not in the, Lansing, the central Michigan area, finding someone who holds themselves out to be an estate planning attorney. So it's nothing against general practitioners, but this is a very specialized area that I expect that other estate planners keep up on their continuing education and they're making sure that they know all of the things that are current in those areas. So I think it's important to definitely find someone who specializes in that area. And then as far as getting started with us, we are kind of unique. We have a home office and we do have client meetings in our home office, but we generally travel to our clients. And we don't necessarily have a cap on how far we're willing to travel, but we also have the flexibility of doing virtual appointments. And generally, we just start with some type of a consult and outline really the specifics that would benefit each individual client and then go from there. Yeah.
Perfect. Hmm. Well, I learned a lot today, so thank you both. Katrina with Cornerstone Legal and Justine with BeneGuides. And we will be sure to have all the links to your websites and information of how to reach both of you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.